we made it to the middle of May, so congratulations to everyone.
We're still going.
We're still going. We are indeed. We are indeed. So anyway, well, by now you all should know the three of us. So my name is Ed Earl, and I'm in San Diego and run a construction owner's rep project management company down here. And why don't you two introduce yourselves?
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I'm Paul Stan. I've been doing this for 35 years. Makes me an older guy, and worked with lots of people, never been here before. And so it's like a new adventure. You know, I keep coming up with new ideas. I had one the other day that actually worked really well. So it's a time for new and creative ideas. I like it. It's as enjoyable as it can get given the circumstances.
I'm David Luperger, been in the construction industry like Paul, but I actually ran a construction company. And I've said on earlier calls that, look, we adapt, contractors, because we set a schedule. It never goes according to schedule. So adapting to this is different, but we have that adaptability gene because we pivot on a regular basis just because of the nature of our business. So we're going to be reviewing some ideas, which is how we can continue to pivot, because the market may change, but we can continue to move forward. And Ed has some good examples regarding some of this pivoting and what we can do.
Yep. And thanks, David. And, part of the reason for this pivoting is they keep changing the rules on us, right? Yeah. Whether it's the rules for our construction business or the rules personally. I actually went out yesterday and got a black market haircut in San Diego. You still can't go get a haircut, but I got my barber actually called me and said, I'm going to open up just illegally, come in and be real quiet and low key. And now there's new rules in Los Angeles. You can't go outside without a mask on, like anywhere. You can't go running, can't go anywhere without a mask on in Los Angeles. So these rules just kind of keep changing all the time, which is a nice segue into my joke for this week, which is, does anyone know if we can take showers yet, or should we just keep washing our hands? So that's my little pandemic humor for the week. So
bada boom.
I'll tell you one, bada boom, right? So I'll tell you one thing that hasn't changed is our current situation, which is actually good. So the state of New York is the only state in the nation now that does not allowing construction to take place.
The latest update today, this morning, upstate New York is free. So they've taken five different upstate counties. They've lifted the stop work order for upstate New York.
Wow, great.
So it's still in place for New York City.
Mm-hmm. So really, I guess now they need to cut the state in half there and put kind of green.
Something along those lines.
Right? Yeah. All right. So it seems like a lot of you have now gotten your loan money in. Let's just check in with everyone. Raise your hand if you've gotten money this week. So have any of you gotten funding since we met last Friday? Jonathan got some money. That's great. Good. All right. Well, it looks like the money is still coming. I'm going to share with you. Yeah, it looks like Jonathan's our only one. Wow. Okay.
Well, Alan also.
I think everybody else must have gotten funded already, right? You might say, raise your hand if you have gotten funded at all at any time.
There we go. Let's try that one. All right. Now all the hands are jumping up. Okay. Great. Good. Wow. Look at that. Excellent. Good job. Awesome. Well, I'm going to share with you, check this out. These are 2 emails I got yesterday. I just signed up with everyone and got, tried to get as much information as I could. So SmartBiz is one of these online banks. They sent me this email yesterday saying, we're sorry, we haven't been able to assist you. And basically none of the banks in our network are doing PPL loans anymore. And then a few hours later, I get this note from my local bank here at the Bank of Southern California, which is where I ended up getting my PPP loan. And they said, there's still $126 billion left in the PPP program, and we're more than happy to help. So a Bank of Southern California is still more than willing to help, and it looks like, according to their accounts, we still have a fair amount of that second round of funding that's available. So as I always do, been trying to do as much research as I can to bring you the latest information. I found this article in Forbes magazine a couple of days ago, and it went through 10 key things related to the EIDL and the PPL. And I just wanted to share this with you because I thought it was all really, really good and current information. So, you know, there's this continuing issue about loan forgiveness, and but also more about, you know, are you going to qualify? And people are now saying, well, it's not just about if you spend the money, but did you need the money? And so there's this question about, you have to certify that, quote, current economic uncertainty makes this loan request necessary to support the ongoing operations of the applicant. Well, that's a pretty nebulous question, right? I mean, every business has been affected by the pandemic. So whether it would have caused you to go out of business or not, this is kind of very up in the air. But I had a conversation yesterday with an attorney, and the SBA has continued to issue these series of FAQs. And they've just issued a new one, which is FAQ number 46. And basically, if you read that, it basically says that they're not going to challenge anyone under $2 million. So if your loan is under $2 million, which I kind of think is everyone on this webinar, right, you are not going to be scrutinized to see if you make this condition. So when do you have to start tracking the use of the PPP funds? Again, at this point, it's the same as what we said. It's begins upon your receipt of the money and extends out 8 weeks. Do you have to use at least 75% of the PPP loan on payroll? Yes, you do. Here's a good one. If you lay off workers, do you need to rehire the same employees? No, you don't. Your bank will not check to see if you hired the same employees back. They're just going to make sure that your total payroll amount is the same or greater than your 2019 average. All right, do I need to hire the same positions or keep the same employees in the same jobs? No. Again, your lender's not going to be looking at they're not going to ask for names of employees or who was in what positions. Next, what if I'm still nervous and I want to give my loan back? Well, they had this provision called the safe harbor provision, which basically meant that if you gave your money back by a certain period of time, no questions asked, they just canceled the loan. Unfortunately, that deadline was yesterday, May 14th. So if you wanted to give your money back, you needed to do it before then. But again, based on that FAQ 46, they really aren't going to scrutinize anything under $2 million. So I think you're fine. What if I don't use the funds for payroll, rent, utilities? You know, many groups are lobbying, and I'm going to get into this in a minute, to change what you can use the money for. But as it stands right now, you're only allowed to use it for payroll, rent, utilities, interest payments. They didn't say lease payments, but my understanding is that lease payments is also in there as well. What documentation should I use with my lender to show the money was spent according to the regulations? Well, again, as we said last week, the easiest thing to do is reach out to your payroll provider, ADP, or whoever you're using, Paychecks, and get them to provide you with the information that you paid for your payroll. When can I apply for forgiveness? As far as I can tell, and from what this article is saying, about 7 weeks out from your fund disbursement is when the lender will be contacting you. But again, don't wait for that. We recommend that you be proactive, contact your lender, and see if they have any information.
Yeah. How can you apply for it until you spend it? I mean, you have to have documented all the spending, so you really can't apply for it till the 8 weeks is over, right? Because you won't be able to document money you haven't spent yet.
Right, but I don't know if you have to submit it first, like if there's a form you submit, and then they get back to you and say, okay, now give us all your documentation. It's really not very clear how they're going to do that. To me,
personally, I wouldn't do it until after you've spent it. At least then you're validating something.
Right. Yeah. So, and then on the EIDL loan, so this is interesting. This is the one where originally you could apply, and remember 5 weeks or so back, I got on and said how crazy easy this was. You checked the box that you wanted the $10,000, you filled out your bank account number and routing number, and supposedly the money was supposed to show up. Well, they've changed those rules, right? So they changed it from $10,000 to $1,000 per employee, up to 10 employees. I got $2,000 for my 2 employees, so that part of it's working. There's also a grant, there's also a loan part of it as well, and they've changed that as well. That used to be $2 million. Mike CA, who was one of our clients who actually talked on one of these webinars earlier, he applied for $2 million and he only got approved for 150, and that's because that's the new loan limit. So the EIDL loan limit is 150,000. Now again, remember, this is just a loan. It's separate from the payroll protection plan. It's not at all related to your payroll. It's just a low interest SBA loan to help you through this time. So, and then I've referenced this Forbes article if any of you want to check it out. It was on May 11th. If you want to see the details, there's a lot more information than what I have on this slide. Okay, so let me show you what else I found. There's actually been a group now of senators on both parties, Democrats and Republicans, that have now gotten together, and they have introduced the Paycheck Protection Program Deadline Extension Adjustment for loans. They're calling it the DEAL Act, D-E-A-L. And they basically, this act would extend the loan forgiveness period from 8 weeks to 16 weeks and amend the rehire date from June 30th to 16 weeks after the PPP is awarded. So you could lay people off and then have a longer period of time to bring them back on. So as they note in here, there's just no way that the small businesses can use all their money within eight weeks. But again, our feeling is that at this point, it's still stuck to that 8 weeks. So don't bank on this. If this works out, that would be great. This was a bill that was just introduced this week on the 13th, actually. So just 2 or 3 days ago. So we'll see what happens with that. But as of right now, we're stuck to the 8 weeks, but there is a chance that they'll extend it to 16 weeks. Okay, so here are 2 emails that a couple of our clients passed along to us. So the banks are starting to contact their borrowers regarding loan forgiveness. So the top one was sent from Chase, and the bottom one was sent through PayPal from one of our clients that had PayPal. In either case, again, they both keep saying that, you know, they will let you know basically when you can request loan forgiveness, and they're still waiting for the SBA to issue detailed documentation requirements for loan forgiveness.
Now,
so
one of the interesting things is, I guess most people know that the SBA hasn't loaned anybody any money yet. Basically, the bank loaned you the money, and then if the SBA doesn't forgive it, then you're going to owe the money to the bank. If the SBA does forgive it, you will. You will not owe the money. But then we find out, this is sort of new info, that you will submit, you know, the requirements of your bank to forgive the loan, but they're in turn going to submit it to the SBA and see if the SBA buys it. And if your bank and the SBA buys it, then I guess the SBA is going to reimburse your bank the money they loaned you. At least that's my understanding at the moment, which could change.
Right.
Well, and remember when we talked last week, we had the call with Diane Gilson, the accountant, and she was giving herself a bonus, giving, you know, key employees a bonus. We've talked about the hazard pay, and we said, how do we know this is applicable? And she said, look, if it's reasonable, and you're applying the following money, she said, so many people reviewing the terms of these loans that if it's reasonable, it should be accepted. And she's making that judgment as an accountant. And again, it's nothing is for sure, but she said this made sense, it's reasonable and defensible.
Right. All right, so that's the latest and greatest on the loans and the aid. And again, we'll keep you updated. As we said, things keep changing every week. So let's move on now to the second part of our program, which is, I think now it's time to have a little bit of a pandemic reality check, right? So I think many of us, me included, when this all started 7, 8 weeks ago, my thinking was, oh, you know, this is going to go away soon. It's just going to be a blip. It's basically like we put the brakes on, and once this goes away, you know, we're going to be right back to where we were before. The reality is really now becoming quite different, right? I'm sure all of us and everything that you read and as you start to realize, the reality is that this is not going to go away anytime soon. And the economic impact of the pandemic is going to be widespread and lasting. This is no longer going to be a blip. This is an article that appeared in the New York Times this week, and I think really is a good reality check. They say anyone still thinking that the pandemic's economic effects are limited to people in restaurants, travel, and similar service businesses are very much mistaken. Workers in almost every industry, including those that on the surface shouldn't be affected by the pandemic at all, are at risk. We're all vulnerable, right? Construction employment fell by 975,000 jobs. It's hard to imagine how there can be this deep of a hit to nearly every major sector of the economy without a major collapse in demand across the board. All those lost incomes are going to translate into less demand for all types of goods and services. So that is the unfortunate reality of the situation that we're in. I think it's safe to say that every construction market in the nation is going to see some drop in demand as a result of this. So, how do you respond to that? Go ahead.
I would comment that that's what makes sense, and maybe we're overriding from stuff that happened earlier. But with most of our clients, except for some kitchen and bath people, business, especially among either track builders or the the high-end people, that things haven't slowed down at all. Now, it's a little weird, but our direct evidence is that unless you're doing remodels and that kind of stuff, that most of our clients haven't seen a big deficit. Is that true, Ed?
Yeah, that's true. But I also think, Paul, that could change in the future. I think that they might be a little bit further along, but I think at this point it's still 2 or 3 months out, and I think they're still going to probably see some drop. At least I still think that it still makes sense to, and what we're going to talk about here, even if your
right.
business feels solid now, I think it's still important to be proactive here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So, and the thing here, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, Paul talked about how we just don't have any precise information about the future. And also, as I said earlier, with the rules changing all the time, we don't have any control. And while you can't control the economy, you can control how your business responds, right? And so again, this is something that we've talked about. David, you talk about being a leader in your industry. This is something that we have seen over and over again. The successful companies, like our Lewis Builders example of our clients, are people that are adopting that new technology, that are setting themselves up as leaders. So, David, I don't know if you want to talk at all about that.
Well, I mean, we had talked about this, 6 weeks ago. There's this, accelerated digital transformation. You talked about Loom, Zoom, Glide, using construction management software, introducing the 360 camera. We briefly mentioned Matterport. What we see with these leaders, like Lewis Builders, is they are demonstrating to both current and prospective clients how these tools will be used. And truly, I think there's a lot of both current and prospective clients that really are wondering, where do we go from here? What do I do about my project? What comes next? They don't know. And so the companies who are leading, as you just said, Ed, they're contacting people and demonstrating we can do virtual consultations. We can use these tools not only to connect, but to engage. And I think that's the key thing, that as we move into this area that we don't know just how, we may not have all these face-to-face meetings in the future for a variety of reasons because of the long-term changes. But because this is a relationship-based business, people don't hire you till they trust you. How do we continue to engage our clients? And these tools are going to be pivotal. And both of you have said this before, that it doesn't end when the pandemic settles. These will be tools that good companies will continue to implement. And it could be 3 years from now that everybody's using them, and I'm making up a number. But right now, implement these tools, and you are leading. and you're showing not only prospective and current clients how to move forward, but you're demonstrating to employees and trade contractors, you're going to lead. And as you said, Paul, the business didn't go anywhere. All right, so let's continue to move forward. Here are the tools that we're going to use to do that.
I mean, I think an example would be, it's a very parallel industry. We have a client whose wife is a real estate agent, and they were in an area where you couldn't show up or whatever, come in. And within the last 4 weeks, she sold, I think, 7 houses. And in most cases, the client has never, ever seen the house. So she has adapted to how do you sell real estate without having anybody show up, and she's done an excellent job. In fact, I had her talk to the person who's trying to sell my house, having Hawaii, same problem. So if you adapt, you know, you can become a leader. Now, people that don't adapt, we talked about moving your cheese, adapt or die, and they may die. But those of us who get creative and adapt, we'll be fine.
And I think a key to that is marketing. And our webinar next week is going to be talking specifically about marketing and what you can do to help market in your business at this key time, because I think that's really the key. And again, the point here is take action now. You know, don't wait until you know, and we tell this to our clients right now, even if things are good and strong now, you still need to be marketing. You still need to be out aggressively looking for new projects and new prospects. So,
and it's always 3 to 6 months in advance, isn't it, Ed? I mean, you're basically saying, I'm planting seeds. We're farming here, which is 3 to 6 months. What is coming? How are we putting these seeds in place?
Right. Yeah. So there's some good news and some bad news here in your ability to control your destiny in these uncontrollable times. So the bad news is that pretty much it's almost for a certainty that your local construction market is going to decrease as a result of the pandemic. The good news is that your construction business is probably a very small percentage of your total local construction market. So what that means is that even if there's a big downturn in your local construction market, because your business has such a small percentage of that overall market, there's not a lot that you need to do. You don't have to increase your market share by very much at all in order to even just maintain your current sales level or even increase it. So go ahead.
Quick comment on that. There is part of the bad news is you in your own business. If you think you've got problems, it's self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you go, oh my God, you know, I just read that, you know, new home sales are down 20% or whatever, and you start taking action like, well, I better cut my advertising, I better tighten up, I better stop going out. And there's sort of a joke about a guy who had he was doing well and had a hot dog stand, big sign out, had a hot dog stand. It wasn't a cheap sign, but it worked. His son comes home and goes, oh my God, don't you realize in a recession, you got to pull the sign down, you got to save money, get that sign down, it's costing too much money. So he took the sign down. He goes, my God, you're right, son, business is just trashed ever since I took the sign down. So, you know, my fear is that you'll let it affect the way you feel about your business and the decisions you're making. Even though it may not apply to you, you can make it apply to you if you buy into the bad news and you run your business that way. So be very careful that you don't let the bad news affect the way you run your business, because it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. All right, so let me go through an example here that we've put together to show you how just because your local market goes down, that you can still maintain your sales level. Okay, so let's say that your local construction market is $500 million and you're a $3 million construction company, all right? So your market share is 0.6%, right? A little more than 0.5%. Now, let's say that your local construction market goes down 30%, all right? So that's a drop now, and it's gone down from 500 million to 350 million. That's a $150 million drop. That's a pretty significant drop in your local construction market. Now, translating to your business, that would mean that your business drops from 3 million to 2.1 million. and with your current market share of 0.6%. However, if all you do is increase your market share from 0.6% to 0.9%, that's only 0.3%, you'll be right back to your $3 million in sales. So that's the great news about having such a small percentage share of your market, is that it doesn't take much for you to capture market share in order to be able to maintain your same sales level. Now, how do you do that? Well, there's lots of different ways, and we're going to talk about them, but marketing is definitely the key to that. And as Paul was saying before too, you have to be proactive to this. You don't sit there and say, that you're a victim and, oh my God, our local market went down 150 million. I mean, what can I do about it? So that doesn't work. To get a bigger share of a smaller market, you have to work at it, right, Paul? You've got to be proactive and actually working towards that.
Well, and having worked with contractors for 30 years, one of my pitches, consider yourself a marketing company that funds the marketing with a product or service. My classic example is Nike. Like Nike, I'm sure spends something like $12 on actually creating the running shoes, and they spend probably $30 in marketing those same shoes. So they get it. Most contractors look at marketing or sales as sort of a bad idea. They have this myth out there that says, all I have to do is do a great job and answer the phone and I'll be good. That's not going to work. You've got to have to understand that you have a marketing budget. You have a sales budget. I define marketing is letting people know you want to help them, and sales is getting them to commit to that help. But unless you do something, you will probably be in big trouble. And there's no way out of that. But you do have options. And unfortunately, most contractors do a very poor job of sales and marketing. They just sort of look at it as inconvenience or recruiting, the same kind of thing. But if you change that, a lot of your competition will try to get by with the old paradigm. They'll try to go, oh, well, I don't need to do much. I can just sort of ride this one out. And they're going to go away. So like in the last recession, there was a lot of businesses that went under and a lot of businesses that did really well. And that depended entirely on the owner of the business. So during this next, what do you want to call it, correction, recession that's going to happen, there's a lot of construction businesses that are going to go under, for sure. But that's a choice on your part. If you take the right action and understand that you actually have to do something to earn that business, that just doing a good job isn't going to do it, there's lots of techniques we can share with you, that you'll do just fine. In fact, you can actually build your business during this time, because a lot of your competition would be going under or giving up. What happened in the last one is a lot of the older contractors that had too much of a hassle and they went out of business, again, leaving more opportunity for you to move up market. So it's up to you whether you're going to do well or not in the next year or so. It's not up to the economy.
That's a perfect introduction for what we're going to be talking about next week. We're going to give you some specific information about marketing and some specific ideas on how you can increase your market share during this down economy. So, all right. Well, we're just about at our 30-minute mark. Any questions, David? Anything that we need to respond to?
Well, it's just such a neat subject because, you can look at it as a problem or a concern, an issue, but it's the old saying, when one door closes, another one opens. And the reality is, when we talked about Lewis Builders, you see them embracing this opportunity. We talked about some of these tools. That's leadership. Take the lead. You can lead or you can follow. And you just said the same thing, Paul. Adapt. All right. This is what we can do. And to proactively adapt, demonstrate these tools, you'll be the first in your market. And when you're the first in the market, you're leading. People recognize it, and they respond. We've got the tools, the technology exists. So full speed ahead.
And one of the things, you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone, because if you're used to just the business showing up because of referrals, or you had an old program that worked, or whatever, and you find it uncomfortable. I mean, we have a lot of people that are spending a considerable amount of their PP money on marketing and sales, saying, okay, let's make it happen. So you have some extra funds now. What do you do with it? So it's not going to be comfortable to take money and spend it where you're not used to spending it, which is in marketing and sales. And that's a classic problem with most construction companies. So the good news is a lot of your competition won't do this, and they'll be gone, leaving more for you. But you have to be active. It's not going to be comfortable, and we'll tell you some things to do next time, but it's sort of do it or die. So hopefully you find this pandemic motivating as opposed to terrifying.
Another opportunity, whether we wanted it or not.
Right. Yeah. All right. So, David, any questions that we need to answer online, or otherwise we are always available by email?
Yeah,
call.
I tend to stay away just because we get into a lot of PPP questions, and I'm a little unsure about that.
Right.
Can I just read a couple of them if people can leave, but here are a couple questions. What if I use some of the funds to pay our employee-funded IRA? If I do that, I won't be able to afford 8 weeks of the actual same number employee on the payroll. That's not deductible. That's not covered.
I don't think it is. I mean, we're dealing with nobody knows the rules, but I would spend it on payroll, and because payroll is very clear. Anything other than payroll. The one thing I've got out of this listening to stuff and talking to lots of people is 75% has to be spent on payroll. That is for sure. So I wouldn't do anything that detracts from that, because that will make it, I think, unforgivable. I don't know that for sure. But
is workers' comp included in payroll?
I don't know.
I don't either.
My understanding is that yes, that's a good question. I don't know for sure. I know that the FUTA and FICA part of that is included. The employees portion is, but not the employer's portion.
I would,
I don't know about
to be safe, I would assume it's not. It'd be on the safe side. Because if it isn't, I mean, I know some people that are roofers and they're working with comp. It's insane. It's like 40% of payroll. But just for the heck of it, I would not be sure, since they haven't clearly said that one way or the other. I would spend it on payroll, and I wouldn't count workers' comp. Again, nobody knows, but that's my opinion at the moment.
Can we pay 2 months of rent our landlord deferred? These were the 2 months prior to getting the PPP funding.
I have absolutely, you can take a shot. I mean, since there's no rules yet, we'll find out the rules as they happen, and it may or may not be allowed. Who knows? So the answer is nobody knows.
And we come back to the accountant who basically said she's giving herself a bonus. She's really applying everything to payroll. That's easily defensible. It's reasonable. You can see it. We showed an 8-week sample spreadsheet last week where she documented weekly where the money went. So I think simple is better. We've got another comment of somebody trying to run an ad for a new person. They're not seeing a big response yet, but they're going to keep trying in regards to new people.
I can speak to that. We recruit for 25 companies around the country, and companies that have between 2 employees and 200, and we have a whole system to do that. And our pipelines over the last month have tripled. In other words, the amount of people applying to jobs, and we have probably maybe 50 out there, 100 jobs out there that we're looking for across the country, have tripled over the last 30 days. So that's been my experience. And you may consider how you're advertising, because we advertise on 27 job boards, we advertise on LinkedIn, and we advertise on Facebook. We do, this whole thing. And maybe just put it on, like Facebook, or just put it on Indeed. It won't be all of it. But with our experience, the way we're doing it, it's been awesome. We've never had better candidates ever.
People want to work. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
You don't want to sit at home.
Yeah. All right. So we will be back next week, same time, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to, we've kind of teed up this question now of what you need to do to increase your market share in a down economy. And we're going to show you some steps to be able to do that, focusing on your marketing.
And if anybody wants to email us or write us anything you've been successful with, I would, let us know, because we love to share real examples of people doing things that are working. So feel free to email us or to call us and share your success story so we can share it with others.
All right. So that does it. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
Everybody have a good week. Move forward. Good luck. Stay well.
Yeah. Talk to you later.